Justin, you wanted to do a check, right? Okay. Let me know when you're good. Okay, good. Okay. Thank you. So anyway, yeah, thanks for so much attendance, much more than we've had at council meetings. So this is actually wonderful. And good morning to all. And I want to thank everybody. Everybody's giving up their Sunday late morning, and so we really appreciate the opportunity to have this important dialogue together to talk about this project. Um, I'd like to introduce myself and my colleagues here. So I'm Jeff Goldstein. I used to work for a company by the name of Bechtel. It's an engineering construction company. It was headquartered in San Francisco. We've done projects all over the world, but I retired after 35 years with Bechtel, and after those 35 years, I did some other consulting work, which is why I am where I am now, providing support to power transitions. But during my career, I worked in power. I worked in infrastructure also, building bridges and roads and tunnels and stuff like that. But in power, I did about including nuclear, including fossil, including renewable, including battery, and other forms of energy, solar, wind, and so forth. I did about 43,000 megawatts worth of projects around the world. So I have a lot of power experience. 3,100 of those 3,100 of those megawatts are in the renewable sector, and including battery storage. So then I retired from Bechtel, and it lasted 3 months, the retirement, and I went to General Electric, and General Electric bought a French company by the name of Alstom, and they spent about $10 billion, a lot of money for this company, and the chairman of the company said, "You really have to put together a risk management program." So I got hired by GE to put together a risk management program associated with all of their power projects, including renewable, for the entire world. So it was about 114 projects, and it was a large amount of work. We put together a risk management program. So in context of what we're doing here, because we did have battery storage, we did have solar, we did have a lot of other renewable technologies. In the context of this project, I looked at risks. That was my primary job in General Electric, was to look at risks. And so I'm keenly aware of all the risks that are associated with this technology. And we have experts here also associated with it. But now I'm with Power Transitions. I'm an advisor to the CEO. Um, RB Bakande right here. He is with Power Transitions. He's the redevelopment director, but he's going to be the project director associated with the development of this project. So he's going to follow the project all the way through. I'm going to stay with it, but he's going to be the process-oriented person that's going to help develop this project, assuming the project does go ahead. So he will be a focal point. And interestingly enough, he managed the decommissioning of a biomass project that is exactly like this project in Ohio. So he knows what it takes to take down one of these projects. And if we do any demo work, and the community in Ohio was similar to this community, so there is a lot of sensitivities associated with noise and traffic and all those other things. So he's got a lot of familiarity with that, and that's one of the reasons why we brought him on board, as well as his experience in the power sector and the renewable sector. Rocky Edwards right here. Rocky is with Tetra Tech. He's a consultant of ours, and we're going to talk about the company later. But Rocky's company Tetra Tech is doing the phase 1 environmental study for this project. They're actually going to have some people here the next few days. They're going to be crawling all over the site, and they'll be looking at everything that is a possible challenge as regards to environmental. And that work is going to go to RCEA in support of the contract, and I'll get into that a little later, but in support of the contract that we're hoping to get awarded by RCEA to sell them power. Um, and so Rocky has had experience with hundreds of projects around the world, and he has been both private as well as public projects, government, and he is a preeminent expert in fire safety more than anything else. Also environmental and other things, but fire safety is his specialty. And so he's gonna talk a lot about that. Um, Okay. No. Yeah, I know. Yeah. No. Thank you so much, Kelly. So there was previously a city council meeting in November, and we talked about the description of the project, and there was information provided at that council meeting, and and there has been, let's say it this way, I see the blog, I see the brochures, we understand your concerns, so we're going to address that in this presentation. But suffice it to say, some things have changed since that meeting. There's been evolution in terms of our discussions with the city and us paying attention to what the concerns are. So that's what we're hoping to address here. Um, this was originally um, this was originally 100 megawatts. Now it's only 20 megawatts. Okay, so it's not 100 megawatts. It's only 20 megawatts. It's a small facility. If you go over to the airport, you could see what the containers look like that hold the batteries. Um, so that, well, there is no second phase. We're going to address every question that's been asked so far. We even have a slide on Moss Landing. So we're going to address everything. We're not going to ignore anything because I said we're paying attention to everything you're saying. We're not ignoring the situation. So, so let's see. RCEA put out a request for offers for a 20 megawatt facility. We're responding to RCEA with the 20 megawatts of battery storage in this facility for RCEA as part of their tender program. Originally, because of the size of it, we were going to be putting the energy into the California Independent System Operator System, CAISO. Okay, we're not doing that anymore because we're submitting the energy to RCEA, which I think a lot of people in this room gets energy from RCEA, probably. I know my niece does. She lives up the road. Okay, she gets energy from RCEA. And so that energy is going to go on the distribution lines from these batteries. No, not the transmission lines. So that's something that is very different from what was back in November. So we're not dealing with CAISO. Um, and it's PG&E's distribution lines, which you see the Blue Lake substation. The energy will go right into the Blue Lake substation and right into your houses. And when the energy goes off from PG&E, guess what? Blue Lake will have power and all the other communities won't have power. That might be good for some people, maybe not others, but I think it's good if it was my house. Just saying. Um, the other thing is the 2 acre issue. I'm trying to hit some big things up front because these are the big things that have been coming up before we get into any presentation. That 2 acres, that 6 acres was for 100 megawatts. We only have 20 megawatts. And if you look at these drawings here that are posted around, this, so I'll show everybody. This to here is 22 acres, roughly. Right, Mandy? Yeah. This is 22 acres, roughly. This is redevelopment plan. The battery storage, this is the site we're talking about buying, this little postage stamp here. This is all recreation, housing, ball fields, pickleball, whatever, all of that. It will be done over time as the site gets cleaned up. We're in this 2-acre box here, postage stamp, and the batteries are a little sliver of those 2 acres. So some people will ask, why 2 acres? Why don't you just get that little bit of sliver of land if you want to go ahead with this battery storage? The reason is because we planned for the 2 acres to buy the land to tear down the power plant that's there. And I'll show a little later how bad it is there. For people that have visited that power plant recently and seen it, it's a very dangerous place. And I did talk to the fire chief, and he wants it down for many reasons, and I'll get into that later. Um, so those are the big changes since November's meeting, city council meeting. So, like I said, we've listened to everything. We've been to city council meetings, the chat board, all different things. And we want to make sure we address all your concerns. So please bear with us, please, in this presentation, and we'll be able to address, I hope, all your questions because we worked really hard to at least answer your concerns. I mean, I can go right now from top to bottom and talk about addressing your concerns, and it's all in here. So I'm going to provide a little bit of support. And again, the presentation is to address your concerns and subjects that have come up of various different media to support not doing the project. In addition, we want to show you everything that gives you comfort, hopefully comfort, to allow to proceed with the project. Yeah, I was worried about that. Is there something we could do about that, Joe? I was kind of worried about it. I said they should have a projector. Can you lift it up by putting stuff underneath? That's that's what I thought. It's, so I'll continue. I'll continue as they work on. So we don't waste time. So we don't get out of here. Because it's my Sunday too, and I have family in the area. So I want to go visit my niece. So yeah. And this is a town hall meeting. Yeah. This dog they're going to show you evidence. It was going there. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Talk to as many people as we could in the community. We talked directly to a group of the opponents, and we met it up. Concerns our meeting wasn't about advocacy. It wasn't about dog and pony show. It's like this is a list of everything that we heard from the community that was a worry. Can we get knowledge about each one of those things? If you haven't taken a look at this list, please, at any point during the presentation, come up and take a look at this list. It's 5 pages. 5 pages of things that people said to us we're worried about, we're interested in, we want more information on. And so we're trying to read this is not what we're trying to do. Yeah, if you look at this list and don't see your specific concern, please tell me. I'm going to write it down and we're going to get answers to it. But it's all about knowledge. See it in back? A lot of time for questions soon. Look, it's weird. Telling Tracy, we have all of the issues. in this deck, we're trying to address all of the issues. It's no certain issue is a higher priority or lower. They're all primary. So if we address one issue first, then somebody's going to say you're not addressing my issue. And so we'll never get through it if we did it any other way. So we're trying to get all the information out, and then you could take notes, and then you could come back and say, hey, I have a concern with this. It wasn't addressed. That's the way, I mean, that's the way meetings might work. So,
Mike,
yeah. So,
Jeff, can you use your mic so that?
oh, Mike. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. Is anybody here? Does the mic make a difference? Ah, okay. Thank you, Kit. So I'm gonna talk about a little bit about the background and why we're here and how we got here, and we're gonna talk a little bit. There's been some issues about the leadership.
Corporation. Let's talk about Humboldt County.
Okay, but there's been comments.
We're staying here that we don't get your company to invade.
No, we're not going to review my company. There has been some people that have been, yeah, pristine.
Ecology in the United States. You come from Texas, which is a great land.
I come from.
Can you guys?
I'll introduce.
People that are concerned about invaders and corporations. It's someone else's question that he's trying to address.
I come from Berkeley.
So what?
I have family up here. There you go. There you go. I'm saying Berkeley.
We're not trying to remove.
Explain why we don't like.
If everyone can just be quiet and go ahead and just listen and process and take all this in, and then make us, and then go ahead and let us know.
No problem with
Sorry,
Berkeley.
right? That way we can come up with an educated, intelligent response on this matter.
Thank you, Mayor. So, like I said, I'm Californian. I've been in California most all my life. I raised my kids in California. I have family up here. Okay, so this is important. I know I don't live in Blue Lake. They lived in Jackson Hill Ranch. Okay, so this is an important project, and there's reasons why I discovered this project and I felt it was important. And we'd like to present why and the benefits to the community for doing this project.
Do any three of the gentlemen live in Blue Lake? Jack,
No.
That's
Okay.
you're gonna do like I'm gonna record all of it. It's something pretty on like 100-mile radius, like 100-mile radius.
No, there isn't.
Guys, like homework.
No, there isn't. There's no heavy metal. Yeah, no, I know. Okay, RB is going to present the schedule of what we're talking about and the process and all the approvals that are going to be required for this project to be able to proceed. So the entire due diligence and development process. Rocky's going to talk about safety and environmental concerns. And so that's how we're going to address this. So we're hopefully going to cover all the topics you've been discussing. So why are we here at Blue Lake? Well, first of all, and I think I already said it, I have family in the area. So one thing that happened is my family, I used to go visit them for Christmas up in Jackson Hill Ranch, and I used to see the power plant operating over here. And I said, wow, that was pretty ugly, right? I saw stack. I saw smoke coming out of stack. I said, boy, that's terrible. Years and years and years went by. About a year and a half to 2 years ago, I saw no smoke coming out of the stack. I was up there for Christmas, right? And then I said, well, what's going on here? So I checked into it. I found the owner of the plant. The owner of the plant referred me to Mandy. There was going to be lawsuits between the parties. I hate to say it because somebody wants that plant demolished. I'm sure everybody in this. Oh, thank you again. Okay, some people might not want it demolished, but many people might. Okay, the fire chief wants it demolished because it's a safety hazard, and we'll get into that. So that's why this is an important project, okay? It is a hazard. That plant is a hazard. And that was my first observation of that plant. How can we get that plant torn down? Okay? It's rusting and deteriorating. Any kids that get in there or anybody, any wildlife that gets in there, if you care about wildlife, okay? The deer, I saw a deer running around there. I saw a cut on the side of one of the deer. He probably walked across some exposed metal. It's not safe. Environmental hazard. There's oil in that site. There's oil in tanks in that site. There's oil in the gas lines in that site. It's dangerous. Fire hazard. If you look at the offices, it's ramshackle. If somebody goes in there and lights a match, you're going to have a fire with a stack, and those sparks are going to come over into the community and destroy the community. It's dangerous. Okay, I'm not meaning to be a kind of a extremist, but it is dangerous. There's health hazards, okay? There are carbons on that plant. There is fuels on that plant. There is emissions, even though it's not operating, coming from that plant. It's safety, as I already said. Kids can climb up here, people can climb up here. This is the intake structure. This has got a slope that goes down to about 25 or 30 feet. If a kid stood here and slipped into the water, there's no way he's going to get out of that water. This is dangerous. And there's manholes where cable is pulled all over the site that's filled with water. It's dangerous. It's the office. It's rusting steel. The whole thing is falling apart. Go to the next one. Oh, wait. So what happened? I knew that the city wanted to demolish, some people in the city wanted to demolish that plant. Okay. And I thought it would be a good idea when I saw it from standing up on Jackson Hill. Right. And then I said, I work for a company. I just started working for a company. Okay. After all my years of experience, I started working for a company that actually tears down plants and builds renewable projects. So I said, wow, this is an opportunity. They'll buy the site, it will pay for the demolition, you'll get rid of the plant, and you'll put in an energy source that will provide Blue Lake power if the PG&E system goes down. What is wrong with that idea? Okay, well, we'll talk about it, right? We'll talk about the concerns the community has. But I thought it would be a good idea. I saw this in my community, knowing what I know about battery storage. It's not got no moving parts. It's solid state. It's like your iPhone. If you drop it in the sink, are you going to get electrocuted? Is there going to be chemicals going into the water in your sink? The technology has changed. Okay, so we have to recognize that. Go ahead. Thanks. More pictures of the plant. These are manholes. They're about 20 feet deep. They're all over the site. The doors are open or closed. They're easy to open, right? And they're filled with water. If a kid fell in there, that's it. There's no handholds to get out. They're done. It's sad, but it's true. This is the conveyors. Easy for people to walk up, right? But you know what? Rusty steels, holes in the rubber, all sorts of dangerous spots. Okay. This is the offices. Look at the broken windows, right? I mean, as I showed in the other picture, it's dangerous. Go to the next one, please. Okay. So what are we talking about doing? I already showed the whole site there. So if you look at the entire site, we're talking about this postage stamp. And you're saying, why are we buying 2 acres? We're buying 2 acres because we need to put in enough money to hire a demolition company, us, to hire a demolition company to tear down the plant, right? That's why we need 2 acres. You know what? If we didn't have to demolish the plant normally in a plant this size, it would be less than an acre, right? But I'm just telling you, that's the reason why this. And the 6 acres, because it continues to come up, that was the original plan for the 100 megawatts. We're not doing 100 megawatts at this point. In the future, 8 to 10 years from now, 8 to 10 years from now, if everybody is okay with it, at the community's option, okay, we'll talk about the 100 megawatts. 8 years from now, we'll talk about it. We won't do it. We can't do it. We don't have approvals to do it. We don't have the permits to do it. We won't do it. We can't do it. We won't get it financed. So it's not going to happen unless the community wants it. You might see benefits of this. If you don't see the benefits from this, then there's not going to be anything else. So it's not worth talking about. It's a long time from now. And we'd have to get the power over the California ISO system. PG&E can't handle this power on their lines, right? So it's not going to happen. Tax restoration, right? You lost a lot of revenue from the tax. Now, maybe taxes aren't important to some folks, but I know in the town I live in, I like to see companies come in and build something so my taxes don't go up as much because they still got to do the roads and the curbs and the schools and the so forth. We estimate now about $180,000 a year annually of tax payments as a result of the cost of the project. This is the key. This is what I was talking about. We're going to provide power, right, for up to 4 hours. If the power goes off, we're providing 4 hours worth of power, not only to Blue Lake, but beyond Blue Lake, right, into the PG&E system, right? That's if the power plant goes down or a line gets broken somewhere. So then the power, and believe it or not, if Blue Lake loses power and that battery storage facility is there and PG&E can't get their lines fixed, guess what? That facility can provide 5 days of power to the entire community. Island mode. I don't know if you ever heard of it before, but this is important. 5 days of energy from these little bit of batteries right here for the whole town. That's a big benefit in my mind. I don't know, some others maybe not, but in my mind, I think that's important. And I think it's especially best. And who pointed this out to me is your fire chief. I don't know if he's here, but he said when I talked to him, he said, this is really important because I got to take the people with medical needs to the fire hall when the power goes out because they're on respirators or they're on, power equipment. So this is important. We're going to say what? Yeah. Well, let me finish and I can answer questions at the end, please. The cas- I don't want, I have an answer for that. I talked to the casino. I have an answer for that. You're not going to get 5 days of power. You're not even going to get 4 hours of power. Okay. Okay. That's good to know. Local employment. We're going to hire people to help this. We're going to educate kids in the schools. There's going to be a lot of benefits in terms of community employment as well as and when it's operating, there's no one there. I mean, there's security. Okay, we have cameras and there's, you saw some people saw the battery storage facility at the airport. There's no security there, but it's just closed, it's fenced in, it's got cameras, it's got sensors, so the alarms go off if somebody goes in and then the police come and whatever. So it's a energy transition from fossil, right? So RCEA is buying power from renewable energy, from solar. But RCEA's biggest problem right now is they need battery storage. So they can charge up the batteries with renewable power, and then they could use the renewable power going through the batteries and out into the community. And then we're going to invest our capital. This costs the city nothing. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Okay. I just wanted to go through this very quickly, but we're backed by NCAP. It's a big company. It's a venture capital company. You obviously have to have somebody that has money to do a project. That's just the nature of the world. You got to have somebody, even if you want to build a supermarket or something in the town, you got to have somebody that has money. So that's ours. Okay. And this is the amount of experience. So if there's anybody that has any doubts, this is the amount of experience. 3,100 renewable megawatts, megawatts of renewables, 1,000 megawatts of battery storage, 150 years of industrial and power experience, and so forth and so on. Go to the next one, please. There was a question about our CEO. He worked for Enron. And I know some people have read this I've seen it on the blog, I've seen it in other places. This guy worked for Enron. So I don't know. Some people here said, oh, you have a corrupt CEO. He worked for Enron, a company that went bankrupt. Well, let's get the truth out. This guy was in his 30s. He was in Africa. He wasn't an officer of the company. He was an officer of the region in Africa. Okay. He had nothing to do with what happened in Enron. He's a West Point graduate. He's a Columbia Law School, and he was a Harvard Business School, and his ethics are impeccable. I've known him for 8 years. Okay. So if there is some negative statements about this individual, it's pretty sad because he is of impeccable. Look at this, right? And so he had nothing to do with what happened at Enron. Go to the next one, please. Okay. All right. So RB is going to get into the project schedule and approvals and things like that.
Thanks. Okay, so regarding the project timeline, I know back in mid-December, we signed an exclusive right to negotiate the option purchase agreement. Um, it was actually important that we started that back in December, given the current timeline for the RCA bid. So the RCA bid is due by March 28th. And so in order to meet that timeline, we're going to need to enter into the interconnection process with PG&E. Now, PG&E does have two windows that we can submit into. There's one in March and there's one in September. But the issue with submitting in the September one is if we do that, we will not know what our upgrade costs are from PG&E. And so we won't be able to execute this agreement with RCA by the end of the summer, which is the timeline that they provided us. So if we don't know the upgrade costs from PG&E, we can't execute the RCA offtake agreement, and then we can't execute a purchase of the 2 acres, and we can't do the demo. So that's kind of the reason we're moving somewhat quickly. We're not trying to push y'all into something you don't want to do, but that's the reason for the accelerated timeline. Um, yep. So the given this schedule, if we were to submit by March 28th with RCA our bid, um, we would be able to complete demolition of the biomass plant by the end of this year, and then begin construction. Call it the middle of 2026, and then operations would begin like middle of 2027. So about a 12-month construction timeline. I guess I'm doing my own. Okay, so how are we supporting that timeline currently? We have engaged some independent consultants to help us get there. Tetra Tech, Rocky's with Tetra Tech. So they're currently doing a critical issues analysis on the site. We haven't gotten the results of that. They're currently in the process of performing that task for us. But you can see what they're looking for. Are we going to threaten any endangered species on the site with the battery storage project? Is there any flooding or soil issues that we need to be concerned about? Um, Existing infrastructure. So they're taking a look at all of the permits that we need to get together for this project. They're looking at all of the risks, the issues, and they're going to lay it out in a matrix for us. And that's kind of the first high level assessment that is required for the RCEA submission, because some of the questions and criteria that we have to answer in that process comes from the results of this critical issues analysis. And then on the other side of things, with PG&E, we've engaged a group called Electric Power Engineers, and so they're supporting us in submitting what we need to submit for the interconnection process. And some of that has to do with one-line diagrams, so electrical engineering, layouts of the facility that we're proposing, site maps, and then load study flows to make sure that what we're putting on the site and plugging into PG&E, making sure that our system is cooperating with Blue Lake's distribution system to make sure nothing gets messed up. So thinking about next steps, and if we get approval to move forward with the process, this here is not an exhaustive list of groups that we would engage, independent experts for various areas of the project. So this is not exhaustive, but it was a list that we put together. Obviously, like I mentioned, we're working with Tetra Tech already, Electric Power Engineers. JLL is currently doing an appraisal on the site. We're in discussions with Black and Veatch to potentially be the owner's engineer for the battery facility. We've got a meeting Tuesday with Schatz Energy Center to potentially get them involved with the project from a design and help us with the transmission and interconnection. And you can see everything below that to be determined here: survey engineer, demo contractor we haven't selected yet, but we've got several bids. Jeff has worked hard on that to make sure we have the right group following the right rules, complying with all of the demo um, things that need to be done for that, as well as the site cleanup contractor that would come in after the demolition is complete. Um, so yeah, this is not exhaustive, but this is just to show you that we would engage quite a few experts to help us make the project successful. So this slide here is what independent approvals are needed on our end for this project. Obviously, we have to get approval on our bid from RCEA. We have to make sure we go through the interconnection process correctly with PG&E. So they're going to be the final approval for us to interconnect into the grid through an interconnection agreement. We have to comply with CEQA. We have to go through the city of Blue Lake for various permitting or for various permits on the project. Um, we're going to have to work closely with the Blue Lake Fire Department, make sure we have the right emergency response and action plan in place, which also will be submitted to the California Public Utilities Commission. So that's another approval that will need to be done. Any asbestos work could potentially require us to get not approval, but we would have to submit documentation to the EPA or California Air Resources Board. And then ultimately, after all of those checks and balances, we still have to go through investment underwriting, um, get underwriting from insurance providers as well as a lender's engineer who is outside of our company. They're independent. And so they would check all of the work that we've done to date.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rocky Edwards. I'm with Tetra Tech. Thanks for having me here today, and we'll try to move this along, and we're going to answer questions at the end. Not going to try to belabor this. So there's a whole bunch of concerns that have been talked about: flooding, seismic, air, security, fire. Right? These are all concerns, and they're all valid and reasonable concerns. With regards to flooding, like maybe due to the dam break, right? One of the things is that these batteries are solid state batteries, not liquid, meaning that in the NMC batteries that were at Moss Landing, they have an electrolyte that connects the anode and the cathode in the battery, and it's a hydrocarbon. Okay, so once that battery, if there's an issue, the hydrocarbon lends itself to the fire. It makes the fire bigger and worse. We are not proposing NMC batteries. Okay, that's NMC stands for nickel, manganese, cobalt. Okay, we are not proposing those batteries. We are proposing lithium iron phosphate batteries, and it's a solid state battery, meaning, and sometimes you see that in your car batteries, they're solid state batteries. It means that there's no liquid in there. The electrolyte that's used to connect the anode and the anode and the cathode is solid. Okay. There's going to be a supervisory control and data acquisition thing, something called SCADA. Some of you may have heard of it before. Happens, and it's used across lots of different industries, not just the power industry, in which it's actively monitoring what's happening with the batteries, and it has the opportunity to shut it down, to disconnect it from the system so it's not taking on any more energy if there's an overheating or there's something that's going on in there. Again, it's part of the battery management system. The SCADA is used to control what's going on. There's the opportunity to relocate the batteries in the event that there's an imminent issue, like we know that the levee is going to be overflowed, that you can come in and you can actually remove the batteries. They're bolted to the concrete pad, and you can put them on a truck and move them out of there. They're about 100 feet away from the levee. They're not like right at the levee or on the levee. They're pushed back a little bit. And you can see it on the site plan. That's both the rendering or the site plan where we've shown what the layout would look like. And there's waterproof containers. The containers will be IP55, and that just simply means that they're dustproof and that they're able to withstand like a water jet. So that it's not going to be readily easy. A lot of electrical equipment has NEMA or IP stuff around it that provides protection. Seismic concerns, the containers are going to be designed to meet the requirements of the California State Building Code and all of the seismic requirements for the design and construction. Air concerns, again, these things are solid state, and so that they're just dry electrical equipment. So no different than you might find like a switchgear room in a building. It's dry electrical equipment. And yes, there's battery storage, there's any energy in them, but it's not producing any particular concerns. We're not generating any power, right? So there's no combustion going on. We're not, taking power from solar or wind or anything else. It's the distribution lines put power into the batteries, right? They charge up, and then when it's time, it's available to discharge back into the grid. Um, Electromagnetic fields, low level. There's hardly any reading would be found on these batteries. Of course, if you're immediately next to the battery inside the cabinet, there's going to be an electromagnetic field. But this is not something that is widespread, such as like at transmission lines. Pardon me. Uh, you know, with really high voltages. That's not what you have here. Security concerns, there's going to be cybersecurity, there's alarms, whoever the manufacturer is. So at the airport, all of the cabinets were locked, and if somebody like cuts the lock and opens it, the Tesla is made aware of it, and then they notify the police and send people out there. So there are security. There's means to keep these things secure from vandalism or otherwise. There will also be cameras on site. There's going to be perimeter fencing with barbed wire and locked gates available, to the utility. I'm sorry. Oh, all right. Uh, LFP batteries again, lithium iron phosphate batteries. Right, that technology was discovered in like 1996. It's been around for a long time. The reason that it wasn't used before and that NMC lithium ion batteries was a couple of different reasons. One reason was the lithium ion, the NMCs, were cheaper. They were cheaper to build, and they were more energy dense, meaning that they could get more energy, store more energy in a smaller volume. And so, for those two reasons, those other batteries were used in previous projects around the country, around the world. And as things have progressed, right, and the realization of the fact that there are issues and potential fires, LFP is now coming to the forefront because of their relative safety. It's a solid state chemistry. It's outdoors, right? These units are spaced apart. Um, when you work closely with Blue Lake, they won't need any specialized equipment or anything like that. They can just use water from the hydrant in order to cool stuff. Um, as well, Blue Lake Fire Department is going to have an opportunity to review and approve all of the details associated with the actual batteries that are going to be purchased and then put there. There's a bunch of different testing that's required. So UL 9540A is a large scale test that is required by the California State Fire Code that they have to perform, which tells us how and when and what happens with thermal runaway for the battery, and that informs the fire department as to what it is that we need to do in order to provide a safe installation. um, and then there's more. There's other stuff associated with the California Fire Code in there. UL 9540, not the 9540A. The A specifically tests the battery. 9540 tests the entire system. So the inverters, the batteries, it has a complete test, and there's a report that goes with it that is produced and provided to the fire department for approval. So in the event that it's not up to snuff or there's something wrong, he has the opportunity to reject it or not permit it, and right, not allow the project to move forward unless it's meeting all of the safety requirements. Um, and then, as well as he mentioned before, that we're going to be required to establish an emergency response and action plan that is worked on with the fire department, and it is provided to them in advance for their approval, dealing with all kinds of stuff: fire, flood, vandalism, whatever it might be. Next slide. So what is battery storage? It captures electricity and it's going to provide grid reliability. There's batteries and racks, there's inverters, there's monitoring equipment, there's safety systems, the protective enclosures. Key benefits, there's zero emissions. It supports clean energy integration. It reduces power outages. It's quiet. There's the low noise level. You'll see in this particular piece here, the loudest thing associated with these is probably the fans that has to do with providing ventilation and cooling for it. Again, but relatively speaking, you're talking about in the red circle around it. Again, if you get up very, very close, higher decibels. But, you know, about 20 feet away, it's 65 decibels. And then as you start to move further and further away, the decibels go down. And you'll see that, again, out on the road, you're going to be several hundred feet away from the closest one. You're not going to be able to hear the fan. You're not going to be able to hear any humming. I'm sorry, what?
Hello, the river is right there.
Yeah,
You
that's
won't
right.
be
The
able to,
levee is right here and the river is there. That's right.
you won't hear it. You won't hear it. If you're on the levee, walking on the levee, walking your dog, you're not going to hear those fans. You won't. They won't hear it. At the fence
Yeah.
line,
There's
the
also
bush.
there's also some vegetation that is being proposed around it. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, this is a good slide.
All right.
Yeah,
We
by the way, we're trying to address all the questions and the blogs and so please give us the patience to do that. I appreciate it.
I'll take down you at the Novo, and if you want to leave, you're welcome to. But
Yep. So Moss Landing, I it's a tragedy. It's a terrible situation that occurred. I totally agree. That's a 750 megawatt facility that started storing energy in 2020. The the rules and regulations that we are being held to didn't exist when they permitted the project. Okay, and they're using a different battery technology. And I totally understand. So what the difference, right? We're 20 megawatts. They're 750 megawatts. They're more than 30 times bigger than what's going to be here. Okay, more than 30 times bigger, and it's not the same. There's no building that's encompassing these things that's going to collect the smoke and hot gases and allow the fire to necessarily get worse and then break through the roof that it did and have this terrible result. Okay, they were indoor and tightly packed. It was the less stable chemistry, lots of safety challenges, the low thermal stability of the NMC batteries themselves. When it reaches thermal runaway, one of the releasing decompositions is oxygen, which again just adds to the fire. Okay. Um, and ours is, again, significantly smaller. It's outdoor, right? It's containerized. They're spaced properly. So you're not going to have it's not as if we're going to be in a situation where in the event we had a battery catch fire, the spacing between the containers is going to allow for it not to create a Moss Landing style issue because the batteries are not located that close. And the regulations require that we do that. It requires it within the battery cabinet and for the battery cabinets adjacent to each other. There's a requirement for us to space them properly so that you don't have that issue. It's much more stable chemistry. It's got a high thermal stability, and there's the oxygen release at the time in the event that it does have the failure. It's much less in the LFP technology than in the NMC technology. Okay, we're almost done, right?
Quickly on this.
Okay, yep. This is like the second to last slide.
Yeah, so
It's almost done.
regarding procurement of the batteries, we will not buy any battery. We will not buy the cheapest battery. We do have, you know, a code of conduct regarding where we purchase the batteries from. They have to abide by labor laws, so no child labor. and we have to understand where they get all of the materials to create the batteries. So we do have standards around that. We're not out purchasing the cheapest batteries on the market.
There aren't any batteries made in America, bar none, zero. And the components come from China. I'm just saying. But I shouldn't be answering. But go ahead, Rocky.
Almost done.
Yeah.
Decommissioning.
Sorry,
So
I got
again,
carried away. That's my
the
fault.
California State Fire Code requires that that Power Transitions commission the installation. It's required to be commissioned. In addition to that, they are required to have a decommissioning plan in the event that you have a fire at a battery, a flood, or right for whatever reason it's no longer gonna hold have the plant be there anymore for some particular reason. They're required to have a decommissioning plan, and then there are guarantees to make sure that that is executed prior to departing the site. Uh, with regards to the batteries, there's stuff that they can do in order to potentially reuse the batteries in the event that they, go through however many cycles. And for those of you that care about recycling, the precious metals, the lithium, the iron, the phosphate, they can all be recovered by specialized contractors or facilities for doing that stuff, so that it can be reused and maybe put into other or new batteries. And as well, safe disposal, right? We prevent environmental contaminant from toxic substances. Want to move on? And that's it. Hold your breath. Yes, ma'am.
So the batteries, are you saying they get recycled when they're old?
Yes.
Yes, the batteries can be recycled.
Well, two issues. Two different questions in one. That's a good question. So yeah, I just saw a posting. What happens in our agreement with Blue Lake? Right now, it's a 20-year life cycle of this product, this project. And after 20 years, we have guarantees, financial guarantees in our contract that we will remove those batteries. We'll take out the pads that they're sitting on. We'll take out the wire and so forth. When I talked earlier about the financial ability of the company, this biomass plant was built by a company that had no financial strength at all. Zero. The guy that owns it lives in Chicago. I don't know where the original owner lived. Okay. But the issue is that we provide up financial guarantees. Those financial guarantees are by a third party insurance company or lender or broker, and those parties will be approved by Blue Lake, okay? And they will be in existence, and we pay now for all the way for 20 years.
So could you have fund other projects that are more wholesome? That you
Wholesome in what regard? Sorry.
redwood, that compost redwood could be fertilized.
Yeah. If I'll tell you, we did. I think RB mentioned. So we have had 3 demo companies come. And they're one of them is actually going to demolish the carbon plant right here, right? I don't know if anybody's familiar with that plant in the industrial sector. And so I have a meeting with him. I've been on the phone with him for weeks now. He's very, very busy. He's doing a bunch of different projects. He's doing Fairhaven to some extent. I don't know if he's doing the whole thing, but some of it. The bottom line is we've had 3 bids so far. They've met our qualifications. They've had financial strength. They have, code of conduct. They have safety plans. They have all this stuff. Bottom line is we want more bids, but every one of them, okay, are going to provide us with their approach to removal of the buildings and the equipment, the concrete, and the compost, or whatever we call it wood chips, right? But here's the problem. The wood chips are degraded terribly. They can't be used for fuel in another plant. I'll tell you this, if people of Blue Lake want to come and take that for compost, I would encourage the city of Blue Lake to do that.
I can start going dollar views, and it would be nice if we could allow some of it to remain and be arts and restaurants and all the hazardous holes full of waters.
Yeah, that deconstruction is going to be very, very expensive. But if the city wants to pay for that, or that's the only way around it. Where's the money come from to do that? I'm being honest. Yeah. Awesome things. Okay, okay. Yeah,
A question right here.
Okay, actually, this is a question for our city council, previous city council before the elections. We had someone offer to clean up the electric plant that we have, the whole thing there for
mhm.
nothing because he would be able to make money from the equipment that he could sell.
Okay, so,
So we had an offer that was
sure.
ignored for some
So
unknown reason.
that's a very good question. So I've talked to the father and the son, AC Liquidators, about that. Mandy has been kind enough to provide me every demo company that's ever been here, plus the demo companies that we work on other projects. I've talked to them. They can't give us a safety plan. They can't give us a financial guarantee. They can't give us a work plan. They can't give us experience, meaning I said, send us other projects you've done or similar in nature. They can't give that. I'll give you their names. If you want to talk to them, you could call them. But you know what? You're not going to get it. They're not getting there. And we're giving them every chance in the world. So yes, they could come and say. Now, as far as the other part of your question, which is good, salvage value. So we have one demo company that was $1.45 million. Okay. And he doesn't see, and he's a national company, and he was trying to source a bunch of that equipment for the East Coast, okay, because there's no demand here because the steel yards are so packed that there was no demand. So he's looking all the way throughout the country, and he couldn't find salvage value for that equipment, and that's why he's at $1.45 million. The bottom line is the salvage capability right now is not good. And so we got other prices that are lower. Okay. And that's what we're trying to do. So let me tell you this. We've given Mandy the names of the companies. We've given her the pricing. Okay. And we've given her their specifications. We won't work with a company that isn't able to provide a safety plan, a work plan, a execution plan, insurance, bonding, everything that you need to be comfortable that the city of Blue Lake is not going to be harmed in any way. I won't contract, because that will be our responsibility, with a company that's flim flam.
We've got a question in the back.
Yes.
Just so you know,
Thank you.
this mic's only for the audio that's being recorded, so it's not for to put out in the room.
Yeah, I have a question and a statement. This is regarding Assembly Member Don Addis in Morro Bay, who submitted an assembly bill, and it's going in front of the assembly as we speak. And it was administered or submitted after the Moss Landing fire.
Mm.
And she's in Morro Bay. Morro Bay is looking at a conversion of a retired fossil fuel plant there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Very similar in appearance to Moss Landing. So here we are with new technology, which is supposed to prevent the tragedy at Moss Landing. And she's presenting this information or this bill, knowing well that there's better technology out there today. So as drafted, she's looking at restrictive provisions of regarding BESS and limiting where BESS facilities can be developed in California. And first, she talks about environmentally sensitive sites, prime farmland, parcels in very high fire severity zones, uh, wetlands, hazardous waste sites, parcels within delineated earthquake fault zones, parcels within a special flood hazard area, lands identified for conservation, habitat for protected species, salmon and steelhead, for example, and lands under conservation. The other factors are sensitive receptors. So you would not see a BESS within 3,200 feet, 6/10 of a mile, a residence, house, apartment, condo, school, community resource center, healthcare facility, live-in housing, or anyone who has in-home services, a building housing a business open to public attendance. So with that pending, whether it becomes state law and when it would become state law, it would only apply after. It seems to me that maybe the city of Blue Lake can look at these standards as being the standards that they would prefer. Thank you.
First of all, it's really bothersome that our ad hoc committee on the economic side didn't come talk to the businesses on Taylor Way. I have one of the biggest ones, and we use the water, and we're called Mad River Brewery, and you guys didn't even
Mhm.
think to come ask our concerns, which is baffling.
Been in there.
I'm also concerned that you're saying that you align yourself with only the best, yet Tetra Tech was sued by the United States Navy for falsifying soil samples
Mhm.
down in San Francisco, where they had to pay $97 million to correct it.
Mhm.
It terrifies me to see Tetra Tech in this town with their past, and you just telling us that you're not going to hire anyone that's not great. That's actually not true, or this gentleman would not be standing here. You all should Google that and see that. I also am really concerned the city's been talking about this for 4 years, and we've only started hearing about it in the last 6 months. And I also heard on the last meeting the city manager say this is the only business that's come to us. We should be going to other businesses. We cannot just sit and wait. And I can guarantee you there are other ways to do this other than having this here. Thank you.
I was just curious what your decommission plan is and how quickly could be executed in case of an emergency.
I mean, at this point, there's no decommissioning plan, right? Because at this point, there's no project, and so that hasn't been prepared yet.
And
Or,
it needs
well,
to
it
be
needs to
approved.
be prepared and submitted and approved by the fire department in accordance with the state fire code. Okay, so is there a decommissioning plan for it now? No.
Is there a
Not citing-
decommissioning plan for projects like this? Absolutely. You can get online, you can see what they are, and believe me, we're going to be very conscious about what is required associated with decommissioning. The other thing is the battery suppliers, the US companies that assemble the parts and ship them out and sell them, these companies want their products back. Tesla at the airport won't even let people in that battery storage facility or even in the batteries because they want those batteries. At the end of the life of those batteries in decommissioning, they want them. They want them in being good order. So all of the companies are following that principle that Tesla set forth some time ago. So it's a given, and the amount of time it will take to actually remove the batteries in the case of an emergency, it would take literally, it would take probably a few hours, probably at most. You know, all they are is containers. If you look at the pictures of them, they're a container, and they got the same shipping containers. They got 4 rungs on the top. You just lift them up and you put them on a flatbed. And that's it. There's nothing magical about this. It's about 8 bolts that you have to undo, maybe 10, depending on the size.
Why Blue Lake, not someplace else? There we go.
Okay, I want to, I appreciate that. I want to answer that question, and I'll repeat. I went to Jackson Hill. I saw the plant operating. I said, that's ugly. Okay. I went up there. I saw it wasn't operating. And I said, that's still ugly and it's dangerous. Okay. I said in my mind, what can be done to actually get rid of that plant? What economically can be done to get rid of that plant? And I also said that energy, green energy, is required. It's needed. It's good for the community. It's good for the area. And so therefore, I take the blame maybe, but it was my idea that this is a good idea for the right place. And that was the idea.
Can I, can I have the,
You
no,
press.
I want to, there's something I want to respond to. Yeah. I got, I want to respond to kind of dovetail what this gentleman was talking about as far as environmental hazards. And this is to city council, county supervisor, city manager, and for your information. We of late we've had some flood problems in town, significant,
Mm.
because there's been a lack of maintenance of that infrastructure, and my property, which has not flooded in anybody's recollection, flooded. So there's a lot of variabilities that we don't know about how water moves.
Mm.
Um, this proposal, this site, is situated between a major stream that comes through town and the river. You mentioned something about you could remove those batteries should the floods happen fast. you just said it could take a few hours
Mm-hmm.
to remove stuff. We won't have a few hours. We're told we have like 15 minutes to get up the hill if we live here. I just want to put that
Well,
out to all of you as far as
no,
considering this.
it's valid. So let me address that. I don't want to repeat what Rocky and RB already said. These batteries could be underwater. They're shut off. The SCADA system will shut the batteries off, and they could be underwater. There's no chemicals that are being released. They're enclosed cabinets. The batteries will be ruined. Anything, if you put your iPhone, if it's not waterproof, right, will get ruined. But no, they're bolted down to the ground and they have foundations underneath them. Yes. So I'm just saying that they could go underwater. They'll be, but at the end of the day, that's a problem for us, not a problem for the city. There's nothing, no contaminants, as Rocky said, that comes out of those batteries. No liquid.
I have two questions for you. So, being a retired fireman myself, I understand what the hazards are. So, one's a statement. So, in the event of a major natural disaster, if the Matthews Dam, which is for everybody in
Yep.
the room, is Ruth, okay,
Yep.
we have 5 hours. So that's going to inundate all the way up to this building here. So my question is in regards to 9540A and the proposed changes to 9540B, the large scale fire testing that's coming in 2026. There are 6 municipalities in California right now that are looking at holding and making those recommendations in alignment with what's going on with the assembly bill that's going through. What are your comments and thoughts on 9540B and the large scale fire testing, and how is that going to be applied in this situation here?
Well, the batteries are required to be 9540A tested, and then the entire BESS is required to be UL 9540 listed. So that's all of the components, right? The inverters, the racks, all of the interconnections, the SCADA, the entire system. It needs to be that, and that's current. That's what's currently in place. It's not a if the assembly bill goes through or that kind of.
There are 2 parts to it. 9540B is currently out, it's in draft form.
Right.
So that process is already out there. So that there's that information that's known. Is this going to meet the new standards that are going to be applied here in 2026 under California Electrical Code and California Code, or is it going to fall under the previous codes?
It's going to comply and be designed in accordance with the codes that we're obligated to follow. So it's the current standards was right. That doesn't mean that there isn't potential negotiation for enhancements, but I'm not in a position to be able to tell you what that's in fact what can happen or not happen. Since we would be applying for our permits before the 2026 code was promulgated, we would be following the 2024, but then there can be discussions with the city about enhancements that might be able to be made that make sense, that look towards the 2026s.
I, I live about 5 with my family, about 5 to 10 minutes as the crow flies, and more importantly, as the wind travels. And I'm just curious what kind of outreach you guys have done with outer lying communities outside of Blue Lake, because I realize this is a um, Blue Lake plant, but are you guys looking to inform everybody else outside in case of a catastrophe, which it seems like everything I've read is it's difficult to put a fire out in these kind of situations. In fact, actually a fire sparked up from the Moss Landing event a month after that was tied to the original event. So I'm just curious, and I'd like to hear from you guys, from your own mouth, what the worst case scenario would be if a catastrophe would happen here in a fire season,
Well,
in the heat of
yeah,
summer.
yeah, yeah. I'll answer part of it, and Rocky can answer the rest. Emergency response plan will be developed in connection with dialogue with all the communities in the area. And so we haven't done that yet, obviously, because we're not developing the project yet, because we don't have an agreement yet with the city. But an emergency response plan is always done within the neighboring region. So that's
Be it countywide staying with the city, but like this, give me the worst case scenario
I,
catastrophe. Is it Moss Landing like?
no,
We live
no.
there now.
There hasn't been, okay, Rocky, I think already said it. There hasn't been any fires, okay, associated with lithium iron phosphate batteries. There hasn't been any fires ever, ever. There hasn't. There's been heating, overheating, and the systems are shut down safely, but it's a different technology. And there hasn't been a problem with it. And that's why we're going with it. Now, that individual technology continues to evolve. It gets better and better and better over time. By the time we buy these batteries, it's going to be even a better technology. So there is no, in addition, Rocky said it earlier on. This technology has been around for 20 years,
30.
30 years. Okay. You know why it wasn't used anywhere? It was too darn expensive anywhere. So what did they do? They went ahead with the lithium ion batteries, okay, which does have chemicals and does have, I don't know the terms, but something that could obviously be a problem. Moss Landing proved it. So to your point, this is not a Moss Landing technology. It's not a Moss Landing type of construction. It's not a Moss Landing type of battery. It's nothing. Yeah.
Actually, give the worst case scenario.
Yes. 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 What is the worst case scenario?
In my opinion, based upon the way in which the system, the advancements and the requirements of the fire code now is that one container would be on fire. It would be one container's worth. Um, that varies. Usually, right? The fire department will show up. They'll connect to the hydrant, and they're going to protect the adjacent containers.
In a hot summer with a spray.
No.
Well, again, are there you're talking about like having like somebody having like an open campfire and then embers going other places and stuff like that? That again with it's a non-combustible enclosure and it's IP55, which again is dustproof and waterproof, not watertight. And so it's going to be limited to that, and the expectation would not be that you would expect it to be fires to be promulgated beyond that location.
We've got folks that have their hands up too.
Let's just go on. Move on. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what. He, he, well, wait, hold on a second. There's never been a fire with this technology. They've done, what are you asking about? Water?
Worst case scenario or something where you have no water. Fire flames.
I would.
So
It's not known. It's not known. It's been around 30 years.
So the batteries are solid state. They don't have liquid, so they're not just seeping stuff in, out of. And then the container again is waterproof and it's dustproof. Okay, so unless somebody vandalizes and does something specifically in order to cause something to happen that's unforeseen, there's no expectation that there's going to be anything from these batteries seeping into the local water. There's no expectation of that. It's within the non-combustible container. And I understand that you said something about Hunter's Point, right? Yes, I'm a member of Tetra Tech, and something happened. Something to do with soil remediation, and they falsified records. I totally understand. I'm a fire protection engineer. Had nothing to do with it. I'm not making excuses. I'm not denying it. I can simply say that I have a canon of ethics as a fire protection engineer to look out for people's, health and safety. And that's on me. Completely separate.
Gentlemen, right next to me, won't you stand up?
So I've been listening for about the last hour, and everything you talked about is downstream of my concern, which is site selection. So I want to stay focused on site selection. I want to make a comment, and then I want to ask a direct question about site selection that should be on your paperwork before you ever set out of the office. Well, for all type of facilities. First of all, worst case scenario I learned in this room was CERT is a 9.0 earthquake. Ruth Lake spills at the same time the tsunami pushes water up from the ocean. That property has been swamped twice in the last 70 years just due to rain. Not anything that, okay. In that scenario, there are no vehicles, all the roads are busted up, the bridge is probably down over the Mad River into McKinleyville. All right, that's a worst case scenario. You wouldn't say it, he asked for it. If somebody want to say that's wrong, that's what I was taught about Blue Lake. So site selection. There's only one thing I see that site has that's attractive enough for you to spend all of this money, and that's the hookup to the grid. I can't imagine that when you're in your ivory tower going like, we want a place that's next to a river that's been swamped twice in the last 70 years. Why would you pick that location for any other reason than the hookup to the grid? Oh, Neeland is nice and it's never going to flood, but there's no hookup to the grid. You wax poetic about the airport. There's lots of flat land in Dallas Prairie that tsunami is never going to get to. This is why you want to build next to a community right here. It's you got the history. So I really want you to tell me. My question is, without anything downstream, will you sit down and go like, we're going to build with venture capital, we're going to build 10 of these facilities. What's the ideal location for them? Tell me, is the ideal location next to a river this close to a floodplain and a tsunami threat and a 9.0 earthquake threat? How can that possibly be? Please tell me, what is your ideal site location? Because you're doing a lot of ancillary fixing to make this work.
Um, so, can I answer the question?
I'd like
You want
an answer.
Yeah, okay. So, whatever you want. Okay, so why did we pick the site? I think I tried.
No, the question is, what is the ideal site? Is this it?
I think this is a good site. Besides the transmission, huh?
Would the ideal site be this close to a river?
Ideal, all power plants, most all power plants that produce energy and have very bad chemicals, very bad materials, fuels, lubes, all this type of terrible stuff are built next to rivers. You know why?
Because global warming didn't exist when they were built.
What's that?
That's because global warming didn't exist when they were built.
Ah, okay.
What planet Earth, right?
That the battery storage doesn't contribute to global warming. I just say that. Yeah.
Control here.
Yeah.
Right here. I've been waiting a long time. I got my thing. I think it's on. So,
What was the question? It's got to be near a distribution grid. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So battery storage facilities, if you look at them and where they're located, okay, throughout California, let me say in California, most of them are in either two locations next to a solar field. Okay. Right. That makes sense. The solar field charges the batteries, like at the airport. And the other ones are built in a metropolitan area. And the reason is because they're built close to the load where the people need the energy instantly. And if they're not built close to the load where the people need the energy quickly, then it's never going to get to them. And the lines, if they were built far away, off in the desert, off in a valley, right, then the energy wouldn't get to the communities if there was a natural disaster outside in the entire community. And so battery energy facilities, there's a facility called Goleta. That facility, maybe you want to call up the picture. That Goleta facility is built next to shopping, parking, and condominiums and homes. They built it there because in California, old lithium ion technology, not the new technology, right? But they built it there primarily because for its location, it's about, well, it's bigger than ours. It's the same. 60 megawatts or 20 megawatts. So you can see in comparison what now. It's built next to condo. It's built next to shopping. It's built next to store. This is a restaurant. This is why they built them. This is why. That's it.
It's trying to answer the question.
To communities so that if it moves power from the community keeps the power on. It's good for medical needs, it's good to your households, and they don't contaminate, and there's never been a fire. So that's it. Next to a solar field like this airport, or in a metropolitan area where the loads exist. This is 60 kV. You know why? Because the PG&E transmission system is right here. Okay. The power, if everything in this whole community, what all these homes over here. No, you know what? I already said the river, the batteries can get submerged.
Oh, they cannot not be submerged.
Someone's standing here giving it and it shows. You know what? The bad Tesla said, do not submerge.
It's gonna leak with it.
In their safety data, if there is some fire. Secondly, the person who's tech is telling us that these are solid state batteries. Go do your homework. Lithium iron phosphate are not solid state batteries. They are not. They are lithium ion batteries. They are a subset of lithium ion batteries. And that's not true. So the gentleman was absolutely correct. Our river, that levee was breached in 1964. And it flooded the property out. I think that wants to see it. I have aerial maps that show the devastation to the map. You know, that was, so you aren't going to be able to get.
Can I make you a promise?
No.
If we go through, if we start this project and the permitting doesn't go through, the project won't proceed.
No.
What's the bottom line?
The permit.
I told you
Would not that you could go with this, but it would not be interested.
I'll answer the question. 20 megawatts is among, and I think I said it once, is among the smallest battery storage facilities in the United States. There are small ones, probably 20 megawatts. Well, we know they're 20 meg lithium ion, but they're still 20 megawatts. The bottom line is the economics. When you have a project, any project that's developed that has what you call hard costs, cost to develop, cost to permit, it doesn't make a difference if it's a little house or a big house. If you want to hook up to the sewer, the water, the power, you're going to pay the same thing if you have a mansion or a little house. We have the same issue with the development of a project of this size, right? So we're going to have all these hard costs. The more these hard costs, it doesn't make a difference if it's a 60 megawatt or a 600 megawatt or a 20 megawatt. That hurts the economics. We're going to make a little bit of money. I hope so. Okay. But and it depends on if we can get an agreement with RCEA. But the bottom line is simple. It's not a great economic project, but it's a good project. It's in a good place. And like I said, I think it's good for this community. So anyway, that's it.
Okay.
Those are the economics.
I've been waiting.
Hey, everyone, I know everyone's arms are getting tired, so let's. Wait for that mic. When the next question's available, we'll have people raise hands up. That way you're not getting tired.
Okay, Tetra Tech. These are lithium batteries. So quit saying there's some new technology. They contain toxic lithium batteries. Every lithium battery does. So quit saying they're not lithium. Number two, there was a fire in 2019 on a rooftop in China. There was an LFP battery. There was a fire, and 219 of one of these batteries that almost burnt down a shopping center. So you got to quit telling us they can't burn. Wait, for three, you said these are waterproof containers. You cannot put them in an enclosed waterproof container because they will blow up. They have to be vented. So that is not true. Number two, EMF has to do with the big, huge Kelvin lines. They're going to run up 299. It does not have anything to do with these batteries. It has to do with transmission. You don't know anything about batteries because, from what I know, I just sat here and caught you in about 4 different things. I asked him yesterday, how many batteries are in these containers? And he said, I don't know. Well, we're talking hundreds of thousands of lithium batteries in these containers. Not one or two, these are little batteries, and they wire them all together in big racks, and they put these big racks inside of these containers. These containers weigh 64,000 pounds. In order to move them out of this city, you have to de-energize them and decommission them. You cannot unhook them and put them on a truck and drive them out of here in a flood. So I don't even get where you're coming from or why they brought you here. Because if you're a fire person, you should be telling us the truth.
I guess. Okay. I have a mic. I have a mic. I have a mic. I have a mic. All right. I do have a question. Here's I really came with an open mind and I was trying to listen for facts and science. I have to say, Jeff, right out of the gate though, uh the way you've positioned yourself to be the personal savior of our town and to get rid of the power plant is really troublesome for me. Um like it was somebody else's good idea to put that other power plant there. Some man, I'm sure he was like on a vista and was like, cool, power plant right there would be great. Like that didn't work out so hot. So I'm not sold that you had a great idea and that should be the great idea for all of us. Yeah, I think you did multiple times, man.
Not a question.
Mansplain it for me. Mansplain it for me.
Bottom line is, the bottom line is that people develop projects all over the earth. Okay? And if somebody has a good idea, why should they not present it? That's the bottom line. And if it's good or bad, then let the chips fall. But
Yeah.
they gotta say so.
The chips have fallen about the power plant and the chips have fallen in Moss Landing. And so I think people are having to deal with the consequences of other people's seemingly good ideas. So my question is, I really have no idea like what happens next. Is this before the city council? Are you all deciding? And like what's the process to gather more input? Uh-huh.
Say at the council meeting, they're deciding if they're going to this in March or if they're going to move this to September. Tuesday, they have to have a decision.
So I have a question. My question is so do I. So my question is you say that, you're bringing power to the community if there's a power failure or whatever for medical reasons and stuff. Why are you not putting this idea closer to the towns that have hospitals? We don't have any medical facilities out here. Why don't you go put it in Eureka where there's a big old hospital and they need. What about Arcata? Yeah, they have a hospital too. These systems? All right. So why do we need it? Yeah. Oh,
Just
I got you.
really,
Money in the city's budget.
Oh,
Really quickly, you say that that these containers are waterproof when they're easily bolted down and removed, and then you're talking about floodwaters. Um, with the floodwaters we get there, it can get pretty intense. There's a lot of debris coming down the river with those floodwaters, logs, so on. Are you guys going to engineer into them being able to take the impact of a serious storm and being hit, and not just picking it up and just battering it right off?
Environmental impact statement. There has been particular. Our meeting identified dozens and dozens of permits and approvals. That subject is got to be, and everybody in this community and every communities as part of this process is going to get to provide their feedback. This is a public document. Everybody's going to see it. Everybody's going to look at it and say, "You're missing this. You're missing." That's what this project is all about. We can't proceed with the project without all of that permitting and approvals completed. So it's going to be impacted.
Right here in the middle.
I've got a mic.
Okay, you'll come forward after your.
Don't have worldwide experience, but I have 10 or 15 years of experience doing development projects with a local development company.
Mm.
And no project goes forward unless it makes money.
Yeah,
Now,
it's true.
it's either phase one or it's not. And there's no reason to have more land than you need if it's only going to be 20 megawatts.
We agree.
So that you can say what you want to say, but this is just a slippery slope. This is the beginning of a larger project. It is a 6-acre project. And you can't deny that you wouldn't be doing the project if it didn't pencil out. I mean, I've
Yeah. No. As I said earlier, and I'll repeat it, and it's a good point. Where the economics are tight because of the fixed cost, as you know, as a developer. However, if we go ahead, we want to see how the community accepts this project. We want to see if it works. And you know what? If it doesn't work, okay, then there's not going to be anything else. If there is something, but you need the community's approval to be able to do anything further. I don't live here, so I know that you have to get all of the city council and all of the community to be behind it. If there's anything done.
So I've lived here for 47 years. And we continue to have fire risk and lack of homeowners insurance available in this area. And just a tree 150 yards away will quash you from being able to get homeowners insurance. If you can't get homeowners insurance, your property values go down. And so there's a huge risk of anything that potentially creates a bigger fire hazard than we already have in driving down our property values. Now, the other question that I have is this truly this company only 2 years old?
Yeah, this company is 2 years old, but as you saw what I presented in the beginning,
Okay.
It is 2 years old. Yeah. But the individuals within the company.
Developers, they partition their risk by having limited liability companies that contain only the project. And so there's no money available from this big super duper venture capital company to come in and bail out this LLC if it goes south.
So what's going south if there's an imminent disaster?
It's no financial backing. It's got 2 years of experience. It's never been built the best yet. It's from what I understand.
We've all built best in the company, but yes.
The company has not.
Yeah.
And so we're hiring a 2-year-old company to build something they've never built before. And then we're going to get 20-year guarantees about how they're going to financially take care of us, which is a bunch of hogwash.
Well, you've developed projects. How many projects are in LLCs? Do you know why they're in LLCs?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, they're in LLCs. No, they're in LLCs to protect that venture from outside influence from failed projects. I work for
protect the mother company from a failed project inside the LLC.
That
And that's what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying is that project will have performance guarantees to the community. They'll have insurance, they'll have bonding, they'll have all sorts of protections. Okay. If there is a project that is of the same name, the same LLC, okay, and that project goes bad, all the other projects of the same LLC are going to get dragged down by it.
Which
They shouldn't. That's the point. That's why. Would you want,
The same company.
let me ask you a question. If you shared your house insurance with your next door neighbor, I'll ask the question. If you shared, I'll word it differently. If I shared the house insurance with my next door neighbor, okay, and my next door neighbor has a problem with their house, okay, they have flood, they have leaks, they have this, they have that. What's going to happen to my insurance? It's going to go up. I share the insurance. I share the guarantees. Okay. I don't want that. That's why people have LLCs. It's to protect the individual property, to protect the individual owner. That's the reason for LLCs. I worked for a company that had literally tens of thousands of LLCs. And you know what? The reason is because you're trying to protect the other company from a failure of another project. It's a different perspective. I'm sorry, but it's true.
So I have just one
So that the insurance is a good example.
with relation to the project and ladies' comments about the power plant that's down there now. It
Yeah.
was a tax credit project, is my understanding. So they got benefit from the government.
Yeah.
As soon as the benefit went away, so did the project. Now we're stuck in the mess. So if I want to know how much green money, green energy money is involved in funding the project.
No green energy money is funding the project. We get the benefit of the investment tax credits through the Green New Deal.
So it's
But that is a tax credit. That is not funding. Big difference. We are putting in equity, we're raising debt, and we're getting a tax benefit.
but
It's a different tax rate.
are there because
Trying to promote green
green
energy. That's right.
and so whenever the government changes its attitude about green energy, those things go away, and that will affect your business.
Not
This you want investment tax credit, so we get it up front for the project. It's not a
Right.
production
It's
tax
like
credit.
it's like a
You might be thinking of
affordable housing project where you get development fees and so
That's
forth.
continued subsidy. This tax is a tax credit when the financing closes. We put in equity, we go get debt from the bank, and that funds the project. We submit our tax application, we get whatever credit there is associated to support the financing, and then the project gets built, and there is nothing else after that. It won't affect the future of the project. It has no impact on the future of the project.
Here we've got a gentleman right here, kind of in the middle, and he has a mic here.
Thank you, thank you. So I guess you can tell here that you're talking to a room full of people who have long ago been sold a bill of goods that came back to bite them.
You are right about that.
And
That
what
plant, yeah.
what I hear you saying is that you're actually offering as part of this project to clean up
Yes,
after the last bad actors
that's correct.
and then put something else there that uses some of the infrastructure that's there. That seems very reasonable to me.
That's
Now,
correct.
I've been noticing that there's a lot of brackish water leaving that property. And particularly when it was raining really hard, I noticed that the water that was leaving the property was just especially dark.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's in all of that. Maybe it's just tannins, but maybe it's synthetics as well from the production there. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
And you can instructor, and you have a great point. I'm worried, and we have to do testing as part of the permitting. I'm worried there's certain water pumps underneath this water, and there's oil, and there's just bad stuff in this water, and this water is flowing over the edge, as you can see in this picture. I was there yesterday. Okay, this water is flowing over and into the ground. Do we really want that? No. In addition, there's a slope here on these intake stripes.
I hadn't finished my question.
Yeah. So you see, this is what you're talking about, right?
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I heard you say something about a bond to
Yes.
cover
Yes.
the potential for the need for cleanup should the system need to be commissioned either because of a malfunction or because of the end of its useful life.
That's correct.
And that seems appropriate, and that seems fundamentally different than our last bill of goods that was sold to us. In addition to the fact that this particular bill of goods doesn't have a smokestack. But
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what is covered by the bond?
What's covered by the bond is everything associated with in the footprint of our lot. We're not going to provide a bond. Well, we're going to get a demo contractor. You have a call site phone, so we see it. Just oh, sorry. It's a good point. I need to describe this a little bit more. So I don't know if this is easy to see or not. This is the batteries right here. That's it, right? The substation is already there. We're going to put in new equipment because that equipment is bad, and there could be chemicals leaking into the ground that we don't want to have anything to do with. We're taking the responsibility of everything within this footprint from a liability perspective. We are going to pay the contractor to demo this entire plant. Okay, all the buildings and all the equipment. So, but we're not going to be on this site, right? We're just going to demo it for the city. It's part of what we're providing, right? All of this equipment, and that equipment goes beyond. I mean, it's all this stuff in here. There's conveyors. So this bottom line, I mean, this is the office building, it's the turbine building, it's a warehouse, it's the intake structure that you saw that ugly picture of, right? This is the boiler, right? This is the precipitator. This is, this is a deep pit right here. This is dangerous. This is the cooling towers. There's a deep pit in here. And the door's broken off. I hate to see if kids go in there because they again could fall in the pit and something bad could happen. We're going to demolish all that. To answer your question, once we're gone, we're gone. We don't own this property. Our original 6 acres went all the way through to the wood chips. Okay, but we're gearing it back. We're going to provide all this service, and the bonding will provide everything associated in this property. If
the amount of bond?
we're going to have to determine it with the lenders. It's going to depend on the financing. And we haven't gotten bids yet from the battery suppliers. So we really don't know. We're getting a price from Tesla. Whether we want Tesla or not is still up in the air. Because the city might not want Tesla. You might want another technology.
Are you saying engineering about the exact design? We would then work with the fire department to have first response. So that design will feed what that.
Yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fine. Okay. So, haven't been really paying attention to what's going on in Blue Lake, but now I am. So when you guys are looking to buy this property, you buying the 60 kV as well?
Yeah. Well,
Transmission line?
yeah, we're applying.
You're gonna buy
We're applying. Yes, we are.
That's a
We're
private
applying
line.
to PG&E.
They're private lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're putting in an application. If this goes forward, we can't
Yeah.
do anything.
What do you think that's worth?
We don't know. PG&E.
But you do know how much it's worth.
I don't know.
Yeah, you
PG&E
do.
has to manage that line.
Yeah, and the breaker.
And the breakers are PG&E.
Yeah.
The transformer is ours.
That's worth a lot of money.
If you want that transformer, sold. Because that is a lot of money to
That's
remove and
beyond the
dispose
point.
of.
It's a permit of where you put that transformer.
The transformer is going to go in the same footprint as the other one.
Exactly, because it's already permitted.
Yeah, but we can't
You
use
you could never permit to have that transformer built today in that same spot.
Oh, for sure. It'd be difficult.
Yeah,
It'd be difficult. It would be difficult. I agree with you.
Legacy equipment in house.
Yeah.
And the transmission line, $1 million.
That currently belongs to Blue Lake.
That's ours. That's our power line.
You go ahead and sell it.
How much you want to buy it for?
I'm not going to buy it.
Why not?
Because it's PG&E's line.
Yeah, it's not PG's line. That's a private line.
Is that true? I don't think it is.
Well, let's find out.
I don't think it
Let's
is.
find out before we sell this to you because you're going to buy the transmission.
I think
Who
that
owns it?
I think PG&E would argue with you that when that line was developed, I think when that line was developed, like all distribution lines, the developer pays
Oh,
for the
see,
line.
is that transmission or distribution?
Distribution. It's distribution.
It's 60 kV.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is
34.5 MVA. Yeah.
60 kV is transmission.
Yes. No, 60 kV, that line is
No,
distribution.
60 kV is transmission.
That
12
line
kV
is
distribution.
That's a PG&E distribution line. I'm sorry.
Yes.
It is.
100%.
And so therefore it is now owned and maintained by PG&E.
It is defunct.
It was
not
paid
by
for
anybody.
it was paid for by the original developer of the property when they went all the way from the point of interconnect, which is the line going to the Blue Lake substation.
So would it be safe to say this is like easy job for you guys to put batteries in just because it's already in place?
It's not a difficult job.
No, not at all.
It isn't. It isn't. I would agree with that. Yeah. That's correct.
How many currently active sites do you have, best facilities, as your company?
Well, including our parent company, we have probably about 60 sites.
Then they're all active?
They're all active. No.
Can I ask my question now, please? You passed it about 6 times back there. I'll be happy to wait for one more. Thank you. Okay, there you go.
I just have a question about fire again. The fire concern of the batteries. You said that the containers that they're in are dust proof and that they can withstand a jet of water. But are you saying that there's no fire risk? Say a flood comes, they're sitting in 2 feet of water, you couldn't remove them in time. Are they able to just sit in water? Is there a fire risk with them just sitting there? Because a jet of water is different from sustained water exposure.
I understand, right? The SCADA system would shut them down so that they wouldn't be active.
And when they're inactive, there's absolutely no risk of contamination or fire.
Not that I am aware of. No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kent. I want to disclose I spoke to Jeff for probably 2 or 3 phone calls, maybe an hour each while I was in Mexico to find out what's going on with this and educate myself. So one of our biggest questions were, what happens if we have a flood or something like that? So I said, how fast did he think they could be gotten out? And we talked about that's of major importance. So then I went ahead and I verified, and I didn't get back to you, I apologize, with Scott Farley of Kernan, who's our local person who has the tools to do it, would mobilize if I need these tools. He said probably about 24 hours to allow that to mobilize and get them out of there. One of my questions is, and somebody already asked it, we need to know what this is worth, and the value is not in the dirt. The dirt's worth $5 a square foot, according to the appraisals I have here from all the adjoining parcels. The value is an ability to hook up to the thing. If we're going to negotiate something, we need you folks to come up, or somebody to come up with an appraisal of the value of that connectivity to the grid, because that is the value.
Yeah.
And the other question I have.
Could I answer that?
Of course. I have another question.
Yeah. It's
go
another
ahead
question.
if you want.
Okay, so we did a quick appraisal as a company. We have appraisal people within the company because we want to do quick analysis to see if the economics work on our projects. So we have people that do appraisals. But that's not the end of the game. So what we hired with the city, JLL, they're a nationwide real estate appraisal company, JLL. They're doing an appraisal right now on the property. We're not involved in that. That information is going to be sent to the city, and we'll see what the property is worth. The truth of the matter is, if the property is worth not paid for the demo plan, then the project probably won't proceed because you still got to demolish the plant. So it's okay. So
I just wanted.
Whoa.
Let me
answer
help
that
a
question.
I still have the mic. Can I finish,
sorry.
please?
Go ahead.
Let me have continuity. So these are the appraisal price provided to me, Nielsen Real Estate, and they're on the three parcels down the industrial park. And so your appraiser, things haven't changed. Nielsen, they're top quality. We paid for them. I'm guessing Mandy referred those to your appraiser. And it's roughly $5 a square foot for the dirt. And so, like I say, of course, that's what 42,000. So that's probably $250,000 per acre, something of that nature. So that's not going to come anywhere near the value that you need
Yeah.
for that.
Okay.
So again,
I'll answer that.
the appraisal we need is the value of the connectivity to the grid, because that is that's the reason you're here. I mean, plain and simply, that's the asset that you guys have to have. And without that, you wouldn't be here. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that. The other thing is, uh, I don't trust bonding companies whatsoever in this day and age. Would your company be willing to put up a cash bond instead of going through a bonding company? Is that
Have
possible?
to see what the lenders
So
are
of course
doing.
you'd have to see how that works.
Yeah.
And then that was my other thing. Just we need the value there. So if they're going to make an informed decision, even by Tuesday, we have to have a few of these questions answered. That's why a lot of us would like to see this go ahead up to the further date out. So all these questions, the transparency can happen. And it sounds like it isn't a deal killer because you guys said there's two different windows. That's what you're going to hear a lot of these people probably say, that they would like to see this thing give us a little more time.
Yeah.
You can see how the meeting is going. You can see how we have to make more understanding if you want the public to agree to it. I think you need more time, and so do we. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
So I do want to answer your question, and then RB can talk about the schedule.
And we are going to start winding down the meeting.
Okay. So let me answer your question. You're exactly where we are. That the property is worth about 250,000 an acre, and that's what it came up in our appraisal, our internal appraisal. Like I said, JLL is looking at it. JLL is looking at the property from a clean land perspective. It's a messy project. They're looking at it from from a non-clean land, and they're looking at it from a transmission availability perspective. So JLL is looking at the pricing from three different perspectives. And it might be an aggregation of two things. There's a transmission line there, but there's a big demo project with lots of liabilities, right? So we have to see what they provide us. So the other thing is, and look, Mandy's got the numbers, and I'm not embarrassed to say anything ever. We got a price of 1.45 million from demo from this company that said there's very little salvage value. We got a price of about 500,000 from another company, okay, that said they think they can get some salvage value out of it. And we got a price of 450,000 from another company that thinks they can get some salvage out of it. It's a big unknown until we have an agreement and we can ask the demo companies to firm up their price. In addition to that, this other company post auction who's demolishing the carbon facility over there. Like I said, we have a meeting with him on Tuesday, and he's trying to get us a price, but he's busy with the permitting of the carbon demolition and Fairhaven and some other jobs. And so we're going to get a price from him. By that time, we'll have four prices. This one company that said they'll do it for nothing is a fighty company. I hate to say it, but you can try to get a bid from them. Anyway, the bottom line is that it's come out, if whatever it comes out, if the economics work and the city wants to proceed, we proceed. If the economics don't work and the value of the land is not enough to pay for the demolition, right? And there's a lot of liability still there even after the demolition, and we as a company have to make an informed decision. So this thing's still sketchy. I mean, I'm not here selling the project, although I believe in it. I believe in it. I believe in it. You laugh, but I do believe in it. And so yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Did that answer? That answer the question over here? We're not buying 6 acres. We're buying 2 acres. I mentioned that in the beginning. It's 2 acres. It's on the PG&E distribution line. Okay. And the other thing was that we're selling the energy to RCA and not through CAISO in the transmission system. So there was three big changes. So that's gone, the 6 acres. So we're only talking about 2 acres.
Going back to this gentleman, second question on the timing. If we submit in the September window, we don't have a project. We have to submit into the March window. We need to understand what the upgrade costs are from PG&E in order to meet the RCEA deadlines. If we
Next week. Yeah, we want to have it before, like 2 hours before we would make the figure. It's going right to Mandy. I have no say about
it. It will be available before the purchase happens.
And your drop dead date it could be a special meeting late in terms of this month.
Is that what you're requiring?
Yeah. So go ahead. You want to explain?
No, I'm saying that is if we submit in the September window, we've missed the opportunity to understand what the upgrades are. Therefore, we're not going to sign an agreement with RCA because that contract is binding. We have to put up significant deposits. Those deposits would no longer be refundable. We're saying early March, we need site control in order to meet this timeline. It's yeah.
It still can be, it's a purchase option. It still could be walked away from. It's an option. We're not buying it. We're not buying it for quite a while, okay, until we start the demo. That's when we're buying it, right? So because we still have to go through the environmental permitting analysis. Both. It's an option. If the
It's an option to buy, and they doesn't have a way for the seller to get out of it. Does it stop becoming an option?
when we exercise it, when the option period is over, or we exercise the option. When we can determine with the city that this is economically, commercially, environmentally sound, and it can go forward. We can't go. We're going to submit the bid to RCEA, right? And we're going to submit the applications to PG&E in March. RCEA is March 28th. PG&E is early March, and the reason PG&E's application is in early March is because we got to get feedback from PG&E from their perspective if it's viable using the transmission line the gentleman back there was talking about. So I to answer I can't answer that question from the city perspective, but from my perspective, I've been at meetings all the way back to November. So I've been in discussions with people for a long time. So I don't know.
Living in Scotland didn't give everyone a last chance, and there's still a lot of important. So you mentioned financing for the project. When you are locked in and you are dependent upon the financing, are you financing at the project being a 100 megawatt project or 20? And
20.
Okay.
I'll say it again. 20 megawatt
So you'll
project.
receive the full amount of financing that you are dependent upon at 20 watts.
That's correct.
And then what is
Nothing having to do with 100. Zero.
and are you willing to put into the contract to maintain the project at 20?
Yes, it's in the contract.
To maintain it at 20.
It is. It's in the contract. It says 20 megawatts. There's nothing in the contract
So
that
the
says 100
phase 2
megawatts.
is completely
It's not
wiped
in the
out.
contract.
So phase 2 is totally
It's
wiped out.
out of the contract. It was in there originally in an original draft. I don't know how many people saw it, but that contract is since months ago has been redlined to death. It's 20 megawatts. No. There is no option to lease in the purchase option contract. Am I saying that right? Am I saying that right?
Can I just point
Okay.
something out? I think this is super.
So my bedroom is the closest bedroom in town to this project would be. So I'm concerned about noise. And I was at the airport yesterday, and they have 3 batteries at the airport, and boy, was it noisy. We were standing right next to it, but we went down the street quite a ways, and it was still noisy. Then we asked the person walking up the street who worked at the airport if it was noisy for them, and they said, "Oh yeah, is it annoying?" And the airport's far away from the battery. It's only 3 batteries. So I'm wondering. Also, I noticed that they had some control boxes, and those fans were even noisier than the batteries. Actually, I was surprised. I'd never heard about that source of noise. So I'm wondering. I've been told that the Tesla batteries we saw yesterday were different than the batteries being proposed.
That's correct.
What is the ratio? But they still have noise fans. Excuse me. These new batteries do. I'm wondering why there are fans if there's no fire risk And why are there fans? Are there emissions coming out? What is the
because
purpose?
because they're go ahead because they're enclosed containers. Has anybody been in a container in the summertime or when the sun is shining? Or
If you noticed,
But why
if
is
you
it
notice the top of the top of the container had louvers in it,
Yes.
it's for heat dissipation.
So if the louver should be enough, right? You wouldn't need fans if heat's not a problem because they don't burn.
No, heat generation is a different issue again, and they want to maintain the temperature, and that has to do with the manufacturer. That's not my design. That is the manufacturer of that unit itself has determined that it's necessary to have the fan associated with the ventilation of the batteries. That's not like a Tetra Tech design or somebody else's design. That has to do with the battery manufacturer.
So fans are required. So what is the ratio of noise to this system as compared to the noise that we were hearing yesterday at the airport, which was quite a bit? What is the ratio? Not you're saying it's less noisy? How much? What does that mean?
Let me answer. This city probably has a noise ordinance. His batteries have to comply with the noise ordinance. Do they? You don't have a noise ordinance? Okay. Okay, good. There you go.
This city does have a noise ordinance, and the noise ordinance from the district is 65 decibels to the nearest residence. So that would be Lynn Glenn's bedroom, I guess. And we also have a noise ordinance as pertains to noise in the evenings between 8 a.m. and 11, I think, at 10. On the weekdays, it's the time when there can be noise. So we have 11 to 8 a.m. quiet time in the town. And on the weekends, it's 11 to 9.
But my question is, what is the ratio of noise that would be created by this project, which includes those fans and maybe the control fans and whatever else is out there, as compared to what we heard yesterday? What's the general ratio, would you say?
I was there yesterday, so I'm aware. I know when I walked back to the gate when the fans were still on, we were having a discussion outside the gate of where the batteries were, and it was very low. And I don't even think that was 65 feet.
No,
And
but
so
the ratio. All I want to know is they're all producing noise.
it's going to be, it's,
Noise will be produced by this project as compared to what noise is
we
produced.
don't have the technology selected. The city is going to have a say in the permitting of the technology. So if the technology, which has to provide performance guarantees, if the technology is proven that, and we've actually visually seen and heard the performance of that equipment. And by the way, when we make a technology selection, if anybody wants to travel to where these things are put together and see the factory acceptance test, you're free to travel to see the factory acceptance test. And that is where they prove that it meets the decibel levels, okay, associated with what the city's ordinances are.
Well,
And that's the answer.
give us those specifications because the person out there I asked, do you know by looking at the specifications on this machine right here how many decibels it produces? He said yes.
Yeah.
And is that true also for these new systems? Can you give us the decibels that those
I could
systems can
call up
produce?
that chart. This is I'll show a chart. I'll show a chart. This is the chart that we received from a company by the name of Clue. It's another technology company. So this is the batteries. This is the inner circle, this red circle. The red is 65 dB. That's what you were hearing yesterday, roughly 65 dB. And at 65 dB, maybe it was a little louder. Don't forget, if Tesla is told to make those batteries quieter, they could make those batteries quieter. Just keep that in mind, right? Tesla put those batteries in that location to follow the specification of the airport, right? It wasn't anything else. And maybe there was one neighbor nearby. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, and that's all part of the system, right? I think Rocky mentioned the word BESS, battery energy storage system. So we're monitoring the system. So that's the red. It's 65 dB, and that is you can have a conversation next to 65 dB. We did. The fans were operating and we were talking. Okay, it was loud, but we did. If the purple line here is 45 dB, these are 15 foot and 15-foot circles, right? So that is 45 dB, right? And that is background talking. So that is a long distance beyond where the gate is. If you walked up almost to the rent-a-car area, the beginning of the rent-a-car area, the far end of the parking lot near the rent-a-car area, right? About 30 feet, right? Then that is background talking. It's that noisy. Okay, this is the different technology, right? I mean, that we're talking about here. And then if you go another 15 feet, your 40 dB, which is basically a quiet library. It's chattering and people talking and stuff like that, which they shouldn't do it, but they do it. And so that's what this circle is. And that is this technology, which was, this is Hithium, but this circles are based on a clue technology, which is another technology. And the bottom line is that when you get to the road or you get to anything going on in this field, this is quiet library. By the time you get out here, you don't have anything coming there. So yeah. I think the airport permitted that based on what their needs and their desires were. That's always the way things work. If this city has a noise ordinance, then we're going to follow the darn noise ordinance. I mean, that's the bottom line, right?
Can I just
Oh,
point out something, please?
you want to where here?
Okay, I just want to point out something going past all this. You
Oh,
guys
these
have
are
all had
pickleball courts.
amazing questions. Everybody's so informed. It's amazing.
Question.
I have a point long term, and I've witnessed this with friends of ours that have a huge almond orchards in Arbuckle. They, in the last year, put up a big solar array to take care of their energy needs, and it was working fine for a while until this company that installed it went out of business, like within a year of them spending a lot of money for this. What guarantee do we have? And I really want to point this out to the board before Tuesday. What guarantee do we have that this company, this 2-year-old company, is still going to be solvent for that 20-year period that there's a lease? I mean, that's a big concern also.
Like many major projects, sorry. Like many major projects, we're going to provide financial guarantees that if that project stops, fails, or anything else with third parties, that'll be approved by the city, that facility can be taken away. If something happens to us and that facility has to shut down for whatever the reason is, right? There will be financial guarantees with a third party, a bank, securities company, right? That facility can be demolished if we ever think anything ever happens to us.
Just like a power plant.
Oh, you have financial guarantees? Do you have financial guarantees? I don't know. No. I don't know why people say things.
I don't have a question. I have a statement. I was at the facility only just yesterday. I'm a little nervous, but I was there yesterday, and they let us in, and we were to a little deeper area, and but I was starting to get anxiety, and by the time we got over to where we were kind of in the middle of what was it? The sound gave me so much anxiety. I really thought that I was going to have an anxiety attack right there. It was, I, it took me a long time to get over that feeling of anxiety. I could hear it even as I tried to walk away. I walked over there. And then it was really distressing. Just know that.
You want to take some more? No, our thing takes more. Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna let Mr. Madrone talk for a minute.
This is on.
That please have, kind of your city council to make these decisions. I saw a number of them here today, so glad your information. This wasn't to promote or oppose. We wanted you to just have information to, be knowledgeable. Thank you. So we're gonna speak and then we'll on Tuesday, right? I believe so. So when's council meeting is on Tuesday night, 6:30 at Scarab Store.
And just that right now, so everyone knows, we are looking into potentially string a strat call. Not trying to have any hit meetings, so it may be over there. I'm still undocumented manager. Stop that right now.
Wonderful. Okay, you could go ahead, Mr.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for your patience. You know, this is really democracy in action, and it's great that you all showed up. There's a lot of opinions about all of this, and I don't represent the Blue Lake proper anymore because it shifted to the third district about 10 years ago. But Blue Lake Boulevard, on the other side of Blue Lake Boulevard, is in my district. Glendale's in my district. And I lived here for 6 years, 5 years in the 1980s when Ultra Power was being permitted. I was on the planning commission first when they got their permits. And a couple of things that I made sure that happened there on the planning commission, and David Glenn was on that commission and others, Kit Mann and I believe others. And a couple of things we made sure to do was number one, they were going to have to upgrade the pipeline from the Humboldt Bay Water District into town in order to provide the water for the, to heat and create energy and everything for the ultra power plant. Well, that was going to be a major cost to ratepayers potentially. So one of the things we put into the lease agreement was that whether or not that plant was operating or not, they had to pay a certain base rate to make sure they were covering that pipeline cost increase rather than the ratepayers themselves. Unfortunately, there were members in the city at the time that allowed them not to end up paying that, which was really a travesty. And additionally, as you can see by the plant still being there and the city's desperate to try and get somebody to come in and clean it up, they walked away from it. They walked away from hundreds of thousands of dollars they owed you in water bills. They walked away from cleaning up the plant and other things. So a bond is important, especially a cash bond, frankly speaking, as some had spoke about here about, if it's not like money on the table there, then what's the real guarantee? What you're hearing here today is this buyer's remorse, for Humboldt County as a whole and for Blue Lake in general, or in specific. And so with the big pulp mill plants on the peninsula, all kinds of promises made, all kinds of things happened. Dioxin was put out into the air for decades, and they walked away. And we as ratepayers, taxpayers, ended up footing the bill to clean that plant up. Same thing happened here with not only Ultra Power, and now we're all somehow supposed to invite somebody in to clean it up because they didn't clean up their mess when they walked away. But Pacific Carbons also walked away from theirs, and they were bringing in, carbon filters full of toxins, including dioxin and other things, and pumping it into our air here in Blue Lake by not burning it at 2,500 degrees, but burning it at 1,000 degrees, which pushed the dioxin off the carbon, but it didn't really actually break it back down into carbon, nitrogen, and the rest of it. So this community has had a lot of promises made. Ultra Power said, we're going to take all the wood waste from the forest thinnings. They never took one truckload of forest thinnings. They used chips. And when the chip market got expensive, they decided, well, we'll burn tires and plastic. But when we were on the planning commission, we made sure in their lease agreement it said you can only burn organic waste. No herbicide treated wood, no painted wood, no tires, no plastic or anything. And because this community made sure they had those things in the agreement, when they decided they thought they'd burn tires, they couldn't without coming back to the community and changing their conditional use permit. So this process with the council next Tuesday night, the things you guys are all talking about, you've got to cross your T's and dot your I's and make sure those promises are not just promises, but they're really something you can hold them to. Thank you. And I'm not going to decide this at the board. You as a community are going to decide this. Thank you all for participating. Appreciate it.
This gentleman here, so this will be the last one I've said a few times.
Thank you. Sorry. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
It's the mic. Just
Okay.
so talk loud.
So it seems like we're all a little bit
Talk loud.
obviously we're more concerned about the risks than the rewards here. A lot of them, are seen and unseen. There was a slide talking about risks. What I didn't see was risks of electropollution. This young lady mentioned how anxious she felt when she was close to these batteries. My guess is it wasn't the sound. My guess it was the electromagnetic fields that go off of these things. And this is also really important for sleep and for the animals. So are you planning on addressing any of those concerns? Is there any shielding in these plans? Can you maybe explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. I look, I'm no EMF expert. I was trying to buy a house and it had a 230 kV transmission line going past the house, and I said, I'm not buying this house, you know? So I knew it instinctively just because of my power background. But we can put, working with the city through the process, this is a transparent process. We're going to work with the city, and if there is shielding required with regards to EMF, it's going to be in there. I mean, every specification, when we put the specification together for these batteries, okay, the city's going to be involved in that. This is a transparent process, and we encourage the city to be involved in it. So that's the only thing I can say is that we're going to make sure that, look, we don't want to be a bad neighbor, and we don't want to be, have something that harms somebody. That would be terrible, you know. Yeah, at the airport. Yeah, it's a good question. I didn't have anything to do with the specifications, but yeah, but you are absolutely right. I think you're right. I don't think it was the noise. I do believe it was probably some frequency that was bothering you. Yeah, yeah. Through the permitting process. Yeah, in the permit. Well, we won't be able to buy, we won't be able to build, we won't be able to do anything that's not in the permit. We can't do anything if it's not in the permit. We can't do it. The contract is a commercial agreement, okay, that talks about it will go in the permit. I'll answer you that way. That is the vehicle that everything permits, that everything gets regulated. I said, oh yeah, oh definitely.
Thank you, Jeff. You've had lots of information.